Levinas developed the idea of art is neither eternal nor outside of time, but that it endures on the hither side of time, in the region he describes as the meanwhile, an interval between neither and nor. Art for him disengages time from its passing. Joseph Beuys explains a painting to a dead head, 1865. Just imagine lecturing to a dead hare in order to explain paintings. Benjamin wrote on the imagination in the following manner: the German language possesses no native term to describe the forms, Gestallaten, of imagination. Only the word manifestations, Entschreigung, may in one specific sense be regarded as such. And in fact, imagination has nothing to do with forms or formations. It does indeed take its manifestation from them, but the connection between them and the imagination is far from being inexorable, that we might rather describe the manifestations of the imagination as deformation in Standardtung of what has been formed. He also stated that imagination is the genius of forgetting, alongside having the power of deformation. Deformation opens the artwork to the possession of a critical mode of violence that might serve to rupture or shatter the sense held in place by tradition. Warhol. Warhol displays his wounded body after being shot. Scar tissue is like a form of memory written on the body, but he claimed, "I have no memory. Every day is a new day because I don't remember the day before. Every minute is like the first minute of my life." Warhol was emblematic of the contemporary time, perverse and sharp at the same time. Leon Golub. The painter Leon Golub declared that this now is the time for the dogs. Golub was evocating a fracturing of time, undeclared wars, realms immersed in shadows, and the world that does not add up. Interrogation 11, 1981. The dog looks back as he is being shot by the camera. For the moment, he arrests the space in which he is standing. Oriame portrays harsh realities of living, hard-grained and blurred, decentered and out of focus, burning and vaporous, discordant and fast, but ultimately much more to do with the meeting point of memory and history as opposed to memory and imagination. At times, his image appeared to be on the edge of their own inward path towards disintegration or oblivion, phantoms of reality as much as reality itself. The human being is nothing more than a life spent attentively passing through an assemblage of countless scenes. You can say life is transitory and live it at that. But when I wonder where on earth a certain scene from a certain time and a certain period disappeared to, for me, that is not sentimentality, but rather a feeling of closer to irritation. All people lose their scenes one after another. Another way of expressing this is to call it an exasperation of time. Time is not something that comes pressing down on each of us. Recalling scenes that are being lost is simultaneously presaging scenes of death that is to come. Mariama. Then what is transcendental nature of memory? I don't understand this well, but for example, when people fear darkness, or when they stand transfixed by the horizon of the seashore, the only thing that I can imagine is that people are sympathizing with every cell in their body with the distant memory of something. Whether this is an accumulation of memory carrying along from an astounding length of time since antiquity, biological cells themselves, or a system of memories cultivated over a long period of time by history of humans and the world, or something else entirely, is beyond my interpretation. But whatever it is, I have a feeling that it is accompanied by a certain dread. Daido Maruyama. Hiroshi Sugimoto. Concept of time applies. I'm trying to recreate the imaginative version of architecture before the architect built the building, so I can trace back the original vision from the finished project. Hiroshi Sugimoto. Sugimoto, the World Trade Center, 1997. What is it that can connect to remote historical moments, the time of Giotto with the time of Matisse? Something out of the blue, a flash across time, or a passion for the image. Historical time, not just as a sequence of straight lines, but ruptures, discontinuities, leaps that open out the possibility of reconfiguration.
This is Giotto's Arena Chapel in Padua. It's 1305, turn of the 14th century, early 14th century.
Henri Matisse visited the Arena or the Scavolgini Chapel, 1305, in Padua to witness at first hand the fresco painting of Giotto. It was in 1907 when this occurred, and it was clear that Matisse was moved deeply by the experience. In 1908, he painted The Desert, Harmony in Red, the Red Room. Was this important modernist painting, which had such a profound effect on the way the figure and ground relationship started to be reconfigured, an imaginative outcome of seeing the whole space drenched within the intensity of a single dominant color? What was it that Matisse was seeing in Giotto, if not the majesty of a vision rendered visible with the purity of means? Perhaps it was a painter attending to the task, entertaining within the secrets of excess, or a sense of excess arriving out of the painting as its own project, the passion of the artist.
Someone else read. Would like to read?
I can read a bit.
Good.
Okay. Walter Benjamin's last text, Thesis on the Philosophy of History, 1940, has served as an epitaph for his thought. Written as a densely formulated series of aphoristic meditations on time and history, we are presented with a series of contesting images, held within a mood of refrain, even in a form of slow motion, perhaps, in the light of impending catastrophe. Language and a sense of loss appeared to coalesce within this text. Dream, shock, memory, reverie mingle with huge figures of thought, the rise of Nazism, the stultifications within Marxist movements, the shadows of war creating an ambiguous space of reception within the space of writing, close perhaps to Hegel's gallery of pictures, evoked in the phenomenology of spirit. Whereas time for Hegel is clearly equated with history, Benjamin offers a different possibility of the image itself, standing for history in ways that serve to also coalesce time and image. It is in this text that Benjamin develops one of the most commented upon passages in all his work, in the form of a meditation on Paul Klee's painting Angelus Novus, which he had personally owned. In Benjamin's text, the image of the angel is connected to the idea of happiness within the setting of the text, which is melancholic. For Benjamin, our image of happiness is indissolubly bound up with the image of redemption. The angel as a figure is the link between origin and ending. The angel is an embodiment of a dialectical image that flashes before us. The past can be seized only as an image which flashes up at the instant when it can be recognized and is no longer seen again. The dialectical image is both inside and outside of time, that is able to reveal an afterlife of experience as a form of co-presence of time. This way of drawing together a multi-directional temporality is what Benjamin termed a constellation, through which contradictions might be intensified. Because cinema has its center in the gesture and not in the image, it belongs essentially to the realm of ethics and politics, and not simply to that of aesthetics. Giorgio Agamben. In the film Le Jeté, 1962 by Chris Marker, a man who has become a prisoner in the aftermath of World War III is called upon to time travel into the future by virtue of his vivid relationship to memory. It can be claimed that on an abstract plane, it is a film about memory and history, as well as the image and time. Relationships which are intensified by the reality of the film, consisting or being constructed out of still image, except in one brief interval of eye movement early in the film. It is stated that nothing sorts out memories from ordinary moments. So the run-on sentence. Later on, they do claim remembrance when they show their scars. The face he had seen was to be the only peacetime image to survive the war. Had he really seen it, or had he invented that tender moment to pop up? The victors conducted experiments to discover subjects with a powerful memory in order to ascertain if it would be possible to call past and future to the rescue of the present. There's a feeling of dread circulating in the film, a dread of being caught within the web of time, unable to escape the paradoxes contained within it. The final paradox embedded in the film is the character witnessing the moment of his own death, a pure image of finality. Just as the subject is not self-seeing agency, blindness then is embedded in the very persistence of the film towards its interruption. The combat necklace he wore at the start of the war, that is yet to come. He realized there was no escape from time. You dream of one thing, but you get quite another. In Andrei Tarkovsky's film Stalker, 1978, there is a scene in The Zone where Stalker is resting alone, and it is as though he entered a dreamscape in which all the fragments of civilization are embedded within shallow water. There is no distinct narrative within this sequence, just the sense of a warp in time that allows relations between the objects to occur outside of their worldly context. A montage without cuts that occasions or echoes with the notion of a field of non-arrival. What Tarkovsky preserved within these echoes, folded in a given field of attention, is a distinction of rhythm governed by the search for time that was articulated as sculpting in time. The zone disarticulates the relationship of mind and nature, thereby opening perception to a loss of common sense. Nothing is as it quite appears. It is as though the psyches of the characters start to morph into new configurations of becoming each other. They walk or drift within the strange, and they present in turn their exposure of feelings that arise within this strangeness. The zone is like the outside of modernity, not as a corrective nor as active negation, but even conceptual beyond, but rather as its ungraspable and immobile otherness. Oh God, for me it's prison everywhere. The zone is a very complex maze of traps. A stream of images interlocking and recombining, always mutating in search of the conjunction of time and image. A zone, a thinking planet, matter and memory spliced into a continuum, discontinuity, nothing as it appears, as stable identities are dissolved. Solaris, 1972. To conceive of history is also to introduce the possibility of its end. Godard traces the history of cinema from the standpoint of its process of coming to an end. Art is like fire, born from what it burns. Godard's histories, Histoire du Cinéma, 1988 to 1997, which existed both as a 4.5-hour TV production and a 4-part book, offers an analysis of both cinema and art. His methodology for this project is close to Walter Benjamin's The Arcades Project and the thesis on the philosophy of history. In many respects, this is a melancholic work on the increasing obsolescence of art cinema, which is placed within the lost conditions of an era. It is the memory body of modernist cinema set to work in the margins of excess left over from the process of categorizing of historical or national passage. Godard appropriates for this task modernism's most important tropes of remembrance from Baudelaire's Correspondence of Proust's Intermittences, Benjamin's historicist Angel, and Heidegger's Andenkendes Denken. This is an important attempt to reevaluate the use of montage and time consciousness in the 20th century that incorporates practices drawn from critical theory, practices of montage, and historical thought made manifest. Soon after, To Mask the Morning, Jean-Luc Godard stated that montage is the figuring of surprise, Montage as the weave of image, voice, sound, and gesture within a process of discontinuous arrest. If direction is to look, montage is a heartbeat. To foresee is the characteristic of both, but what one seeks to foresee in space, the other seeks in time. Jean-Luc Godard. Neither an art nor a technique, a mystery. For Godard, television makes forgetting, while cinema makes memories. Art stays close to the figure of aporia, or withdrawal that precedes it. It is a testimony to the complex play of the subject, time, image. Each in their free play and potential striation, sublate, raise up and all, preserve in different combinations or singularities, one another in this play. A story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order. Jean-Luc Godard. Gilles Deleuze writes on cinema from the standpoint of the image in two ways, through movement and through time. Images, following Bergson, are mobile sections of duration. The crystal image maintains the closest link to the virtual, mainly in the form of a link between the past and the present, or the virtual and the actual. What constitutes the crystal image is the most fundamental operation of time. Since the past is constituted not after the present, that it was, but at the same time, time has to split itself in two at each moment as present and past, which differ from each other in nature, or what amounts to the same thing. It has to split the present into two heterogeneous directions, one of which is launched towards the future, while the other falls towards the past. Time consists of this split, and it is time that we see in the crystal. Deleuze. The image is not a closed field of knowledge. It is a whirling centrifugal field. It is not the field of knowledge like any other. It is a movement demanding all the anthropological aspects of being and time. Didi Huberman. John Akomfra's film installation, Vertigo C, 2015, fuses together images of the slave trade, whaling, migration with the idea of the yet to come. Sometimes the things that serve to attract are strange. Why a whale, or even more extreme, a killer whale? How are such attractions and fascinations formed? A shard of memory, a dream perhaps, or a half-forgotten children's book? Anyway, it is submerged, both the origin and the image. In this way, it is both there, but also lurking on the edge of disappearance, as in a glimpse of the eye. Is this respect assuming a relationship to the spectre that patrols the boundary between the real and the phantasm? This is where the threat lies, this patrolling of a dangerous boundary rendered in shades of gray. The gray signifies both the deep and the remote. It is the resignation of the indistinct. Gray killer whale, killer gray whale in passing by, glimpsed killer, a gray killer glimpsed in the half light on the edge of this world, in the deep of this world, passing from this world. The painting is also fixed, definite, even still, and yet it trembles on its own edge, a still painting, but still a painting that trembles. Sato, killer whale. Miho Sato. If beauty might stand for a coextensive mode of entanglement that occasions a suspension of the subject, then the sublime would stand for an entanglement that fractures the subject, creating a decentering of it in the process. If beauty causes absorption into, then the sublime might be described as a leap out of, or even an elevation from. And in this, it is always attached to a movement. Furthermore, a movement that doubles back over itself, becoming a presentation of such a capacity or seizure. Then we have the figure of objection, which is somewhere between object and subject, and this implies a falling into. Whether beauty, sublimity, or objection, we are given over to a subject affected by something that creates a movement or a shift. The discourse of the aesthetic realm and freedom is possible because both are rooted within a common pre-discursive origin. This is the most elegant of all entanglements. The work of Esther Teichmann takes us into places of darkness, caves, swamps, remote seas, shadowy rooms, all spaces that appear to congeal time. The question in circulation is, are these both the first and the last places where the desire for another light stirs? Something is in the air, like a strange vapor that cannot be named. The codes of modernity are adrift within networks of technologies, in oceans of images and plastic, all struggling to find anchor. Layers upon layers of information, concrete, sounds, and images held in place by pollution like substances. People on the move without signage. Acres of loneliness spread across cities. Sugar-coated bombs and mines made of sugar, virus wars, implosions, densities of nonsense, highways of despair leading nowhere, painkillers and pain fillers, all without moments of pause. What to do, how to think. A demented stuttering instead, perhaps a return to basics, a working out or a working through, in the light of a naked question, not thinking straight, naked and knotted, skipping with a thought, sinking into a pit, being spat out, but still alive, pulsing and perhaps repulsing, awakening to dream, walking, talking, making, on the move, flying, spinning, being moved by things. Nothing stops. Shuddering but never stopping, desperate to remember, is not modernity, but the delicate threads of memory that we have lost within the circularity of contemporary time. In theorizing the unconscious, Felix Guattari poses the differences between the idea of the unconscious as a crystallization of the past, or as a congealed in institutional discourse with an unconscious turned towards the future, whose screen would be none other than the possible itself. For Guattari, such difference is born out of thinking, time against the grain, to imagine that what came after can modify what was before. In order to explore newer possible interactions on the level of temporality, abstract machines are assembled in order to traverse various levels of reality. In the process of stratifications are both established and demolished, in order that causalities will no longer function in a single direction, as the Teichmann on sleeping and drowning. What is to come and how to see what is coming? Are we touched by something as opposed to knowing something? Is the work of artists to explore the train between the measurable certainties and immeasurability. In the words of Catherine Malibu, the future is also a promise that there are forms of life which must be invented. This power of invention, touched by what is not yet seen, articulates a form of desire we called art. Its voice is distinct and its production is difference. Difference? He said to her that there is a man who traveled the world, arid deserts, great oceans, mountains, and then dwelling in fertile and barren plains alike. In his travels, he learned and forgot so many things, but of all the things he had learned, the most exotic was the art of the symbolic winds. This was like a healing practice, which consisted of lying next to a person and blowing air into their ears in ways that would stimulate memories of the various places. So blowing in the ear might give rise to the filling of the air in the Sahara, next the breeze of the Mekong, and so on. As these winds started to circulate, then images would start to arise within the other, and eventually their very being was infused with the feeling of residing within the extent of the earth. Once this process of blowing was complete, and it constituted a form of symbolic pregnancy related to dwelling on this earth. Indeed, the direction of the future is only there in order to elude us. Bataille. I was drifting, simply drifting, not knowing which way to face. It was difficult to separate inside from outside, so I resolved to explore the space of entangled, not knowing. A question starts to jut out. What is the relationship between worlds? The human non-world, inhuman post-world, pre-human, so many worlds to overwhelm sense. But what if for a moment we could glean just a fragmentary grasp of such a circulation? What then?
Thanks for that reading.
Jonathan, why TV is a forgetting and the film is a memory?
Yeah.
I think, because in the text, I think is
television is forgetting and the cinema is
memory.
memory.
It's Goddard.
Goddard.
Yeah, Goddard said. Because this is a similar media, isn't it? TV and the film is a similar media. It's always on the screen. But why TV is a forgetting and film is a memory?
Well, they're not the same in the sense that TV disappears mostly when you've seen it, right? We don't have old TV in the same way as we have old films do. I mean, you can't watch TV from 5 years ago. They're not the same medium in that sense.
Maybe in the past,
they're both displayed on a screen, but they're not the same medium in that sense.
Maybe he does not mean it's TV series, but it's more like everything on TV, including advertisement, news.
Do you mean the immediacy? The immediacy of the TV.
It washes over you. It doesn't occur. So
Sorry, say it again.
Occasion itself, in the sense in which cinema is framed. It's a modernist medium. TV is dissolution of modernity. It's not the same. It's not at all the same.
Okay.
I mean, if you think of a series, that's something that's not really TV, is it? That's not what we mean by TV. We mean, the thing that's in your face all the time. And I think that maybe it's evolved over time, but it's quite different from the thing that you go to the cinema to go and watch. It's a quite different medium.
So there's how do you think about the current technology? Because the TV, we still can go back and review that, what we have been seeing, whatever the news or series or documentary.
But we flick TV. The modern sense of looking at TV is we have a flicker. We cut backwards and forwards. It's like a form of restlessness which never settles, never coheres.
I mean, in that sense, I couldn't, for example, say, watch CNN from last night or from 3 weeks ago. And there is nothing to watch. It's a meaningless thing. It's like a moment that passed, and which it mingled with other hundreds of other moments on hundreds of other channels. It's got no substance to it in that sense.
I just to jump in as well, I think it is more complicated in some ways now. Mm-hmm. If one thinks of just these horrendous, for example, series of Marvel action films that are sort of mapped out for the next 20 years, and we know we're going to get, I don't know, Masters of the Galaxy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But I've been reading recently, because I hadn't read before and it's been important to some of our texts, Heidegger, and I'm sort of thinking that he, as I understand it, perceives death as extremely important, because it's something that the self, which he calls Dasein, kind of looks towards, or at least a sort of an authentic self kind of understands is approaching, and is forever living with this understanding of death. And television never dies, whereas a film, I imagine, I've never made one, but, Godard says, it might not come in this particular order, but it has an end. It has an end in terms of plot, and it has an end in terms of the time. You watch it in the cinema, it ends, and then you walk out, it dies. And when you go into a cinema that it's going to die, and then you're going to walk out. And I think that is a really key difference. But it does, I think the question of sort of new ways that film is being taken, franchises, and what television is, and Netflix and things like that, is maybe complicating that. But if you look towards the death of film, that is how I maybe think about that distinction between memory and sort of nothingness, forgetting.
I mean, also TV is a technology, a particular kind of apparatus, which film isn't. Film could claim to still be an art form, not a technology, although it uses technology. But TV is single-handed, a technological apparatus.
So it's more to do with presentation, because there's some wonderful images made for TV. Like, I don't know if you remember The Singing Detective by Dennis Potter, and he did some other things. And he made those for the small screen, like for TV.
With some exceptions.
I wondered why TV didn't continue on that way.
It's resistant to the medium as well. It's a critique of the medium. It's a very particular instance of someone who's got the status to be able to interrupt TV, the other TV.
Well, he wanted TV to be important. He thought it should go down a different route than it did. And so he wrote for TV. I thought that was really interesting.
Mm.
So it's not the technology in this case, it's what we do with it.
Also, in a way, died on TV. He mentioned his death on TV. He was interviewed as he was dying.
I remember that. Yeah, it's true.
Which was one of the most memorable interviews on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, put illness right at the center of TV, the object.
But I mean, in all those cases, when I look back at it, I don't think of it as TV. I think it's the other of TV initially, right? They really were breaking what TV was. And in fact, all the moments I look back at and think of wonderful TV are exactly when that happened. When it borders on art, or it borders on film, or it borders on a play, stops being what it's rubbish of.
But this is something that is really relevant to today because of the whole online space. And how is TV different from cinema and different from the online space? They all do sort of the same things, but the presentation is somehow different. I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
I don't know, but I mean, for me, online cinema is quite different from physical cinema. I don't even consider them the same because of the presence. It's like showing me a painting on the internet and standing me in front of it. They're quite different experiences. It may be to me that they're not even the same. They're not in the same level. Admittedly, there's a sound element of film which you maybe can experience without being in the cinema, but it's not really true for me. That I need to go to the cinema to experience that thing which we do less and less. So maybe it's disappearing.
Well, I don't go to the cinema much because I don't like the noisy popcorn smells and mess. But I don't mind. I mean, it's not. Yeah, there's a different experience too in the cinema in North America, say, than to here because the spaces are different. And
well, our thesis is cinema's dead, and part of it being dead is the popcorn. Crackle the popcorn. It's a different kind of event.
But how about then? Like most of the films I see, or like for years now, really have been in the art gallery or online in TV. And I don't think that the experience is lessened personally for me. Just different. I'm just saying that.
It's post-digital. I mean, I think what Godard's talking about is the post-digital, pre-digital cinema.
Yeah.
So a different process of editing, a different visuality. It's funny, I switched on TV and there was a film on. I instantly recognized it as Hitchcock because of the color.
I love his work.
It was 50s. You know, that sort of saturated color. And the instant it came on, I thought this is Hitchcock. I didn't know which Hitchcock, but I know it was 50s cinema and it's Hitchcock. But it's even 70mm. A certain kind of saturation color.
So there's kind of an individuality in some of the artists' work where it disappears in television and online, like in videos watched on TikTok and everything. It all maybe becomes more of a blur, more the same.
That experience of going to a cinema and sitting in front of a huge screen and being mesmerized by the sound and the visuals. It depends on the work. There's many works that don't have that feeling. I just cannot get lost in that space on any other way but to go into that particular environment. Forget about the popcorn. Popcorn is irrelevant in that environment. And maybe there's only 5 seats in the cinema where you can actually have that experience, but it's in the cinema you will find that experience and not anywhere else. Or
But
maybe you
that's
can
like
make your own little cinema in your house, but I haven't got one myself. But
no, some people do, don't they? But that's sort of like an immersive experience, like a VR immersive experience that you're
correct.
that you're looking for.
Yeah, it is, because but cinema is a visual thing, and it has also got the sound, and to be in that space with it is what it means for me to go to the cinema, or to observe the film as it was meant to be seen, or in the past was meant to be seen. I don't know now who Spencer's making as to whether it's meant to be seen that way. But certainly many of the artist films that I go to see at the ICA are just exactly to be presented that way and to be seen that way. And they will be shown anywhere else except there in the UK, just for that 10 minutes of experience. And it wouldn't work anywhere else.
Cinema. Yeah. It's quite small cinema, though.
Yeah, you can get that experience, though.
Well, maybe the works are space specific then, like certain works, for example, Jean-Luc Godard would have made the work for a particular idea of cinema, and Hitchcock and those artists. So it's more to do with what the work is made for. So walking by a video in a gallery, an artist will make a video in order for that space, wouldn't they? But TV,
a different sort of apparatus, isn't it, as well?
Mm-hmm.
This installation, it's I never forget going to see, it was in the West End, I went to see Apocalypse Now. And there's just the opening scene where he had a fan on in the room, and it slowly fused into being a helicopter. But it was the sound. It was speakers either side of the cinema. So it sort of got you from behind and in front. It was not so much in front of you, but behind you. And that spatial feeling was kind of magnificent, really. It switched from being image to sound, but they had the technology to deliver it. But the whole presentation was about the entanglement of different temporalities, past, present, future, not necessarily in that order.
I have a little anecdote. Maybe this is a symbol whispering, symbol blowing, but I wanted to share it, I suppose. And it relates to the Tarkovsky film Stalker that was presented in the presentation. Really beautiful presentation. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Karen, mainly for reading it. But also, I think by chance, was it the ICA, or did people say the RCA cinema earlier?
ICA.
ICA. So in 2009, and just a year before, I'd been sort of through hospital and rehab, and then been decommissioned and from the military, and I was to some extent still finding my feet as a blind person. And I joined this master's course at a place that was called the London Consortium, which no longer exists, but was a kind of critical theory kind of studies masters, primarily based at Birkbeck, but also kind of alongside the ICA, the Architecture Association, and Tate. And I sort of thought this would be a kind of really interesting place to go. But unfortunately, in that year, in 2009 as well, and this shows that sort of a change of government doesn't necessarily mean an improvement of services. The student loans company run disabled student support scheme completely failed, and about 12,000 British disabled people, their support needs weren't processed, and so none of us had any disability support, which should be funded by the state during that year. So most people most disabled people in 2009, 2010 academic year just didn't go to higher education in the UK. But I, through stubbornness or stupidity, thought I would. And as it happened, I dropped out after about a term and a half. But in the first few weeks, there was a screening of Tarkovsky's Stalker at the ICA for this cohort of probably about 40 of us master's students at the London Consortium. And I mean, it was just so difficult for me in many ways. It was a very dark, cinema, and I almost fell down the stairs. But then I sort of sat there and watched Stalker, which, from memory is about sort of 3 hours, 20 minutes or something. There's not a huge amount of talking. When there is talking, it was in Russian. And there was a lot of dripping water. And then at one point, probably about an hour and 45, 2 hours in, a telephone rings. But I sometimes sort of think back on that. It's like since then, I hadn't at the time, but since then I've read Roadside Picnic, the novella on which the film is based, which is brilliant for anyone who is interested. And I sort of feel it in a strange way, even though I didn't understand anything of what was going on in that film for 3 hours and 20 minutes. I sort of got, and I sort of maybe romanticized this, but kind of got almost like a more true, or certainly a true experience of that film in relation to my understanding of what it's about from the book, in that I was looking for something, and I was searching for some kind of artistic or intellectual or academic kind of high. I was looking for something, some kind of reward from my journey into that sort of dark space of the ICA cinema. And it was pretty unnerving. It was a bit scary. It was pretty disorientating, listening to occasional fragments of Russian and dripping water. Pretty alienating. 30 or 40 people around me knew what was going on. I didn't. But something related, like it was a world that was happening, but it was one that I was kind of outside, but sort of experiencing at the same time. And then it ended, and I was kind of out of the zone. And So yeah, I don't know. I just sort of did get something out of it. You know, I got this anecdote, or that sort of reflection, I suppose, on how a completely different interaction with a artistic medium can kind of generate, at least for myself, a kind of way of thinking about what that might have meant, which, you know, in my view is, you know, potentially closer to that kind of alien interaction that the, I think it's the Stokowski brothers or something like that, the people who wrote Roadside Picnic were kind of aiming for, and Tarkovsky presumably was trying to kind of evoke as well. So there's a bit of 2024, 2009 entanglement there, but thanks for indulging me. But as a small group, I thought I'd share that.
Again, that's the difference between cinema and television. You never get that experience from TV, and never get the to be put through a kind of endurance, and to find that that endurance delivers a kind of a form of unintended poetry.
I genuinely feel, when I look back, there are many occasions where there's been some, it could be insurance, it could be some event which I really recall, which came going to the cinema, and similar to the one you just described. And I don't really recall any such events, or very few events, on the TV, or just occasionally, not in the same way.
Is it something else then, not aside?
It's because you're placed in a space that you don't belong in. And by sitting and engulfing yourself in that, being engulfed in that space, you're somewhere else. When I sit in front of Lucky's TV, I'm in my. It's very rare that I can be lost in that way or moved in that way.
I'm not advocating TV. I'm just thinking, but what is it that makes a difference? Because as a video artist, I have my videos screened online and on using screens that are very much like TV, that are TVs in art galleries, but used to show videos. And I think we all do. I mean, you've shown videos in art galleries. But what I was wondering, whether it's something more to do with how we feel about being in the social, like, is it the effect of you know, the how Spinoza talks about it, the individual within the social, bringing the individual into view within a social condition, and how we each react to that rather than the TV, like the equipment, because the equipment's the same. I mean, I have a computer screen in my studio that I have on the wall and I show videos on it. It's, you know, I could easily have it as my TV at home. I mean, it's not different.
I think, you know, some of the most beautiful cinemas have been lost to us. The one on King's Road, which had red seating and everything. They were almost monolithic. They were almost like temples, Art Deco, and they've been lost. They're getting rid of them. But the electric cinema that I grew up with in Notting Hill and stuff, they're just fantastic. And they just have like 4 or 5 films back to back all night long. And they're places to think. I mean, and also it's cultural. I mean, I'm a Curzon member, so I get 7 films a week. And I go in, but sometimes I'm not there to see the film, really. I fall asleep. But it's more of a womb feeling, really. It's very safe, and it's get to know it really well. But most of the films are on Netflix. Like a week later, they're on Netflix.
When I was young, I guess I must have been 12, 14 or something. They used to have foreign films on BBC Two. Many foreign films on BBC Two. This is a long time ago, and to get foreign films on the TV was very rare, and they were all with subtitles. And it was basically mostly Eastern European films. and they were on very late at night, and it was quite difficult for me to watch them because I was very, very young. But I had a little TV in my room, and I used to watch these films secretly at night on my little black and white TV. And those were wonderful for me. I still remember those as vividly as I remember those things of going to the cinema. There was something that's very similar to going to the cinema. I was completely engrossed in the films and flabbergasted by what I was seeing. It's this immersive experience. And that was just as that tiny little screen but the way it was presented was just like being in a huge cinema in some sense. I don't know how it was the same, but it was the same experience. And every one of those films also had a huge impact on me. Somehow I can't get that. It's very difficult to create that experience, but somehow the thing has to, it's just like Jonathan said when he saw the Hitchcock, there has to be something wondrous. And most of the time you don't get that. It's quite difficult to create that. It's not a matter of technology. And it's not a matter of sociality either, because the last thing you need is the other people. You need to be alone almost.
It's also a stress upon the egg signifier, the dripping water, the tone of a Hitchcock film, the color of the tonal color, the rotor blade in just the beginning of a film with a rotor blade going round. It's a signifier. It just gives you a feeling of awe or boredom even. But it's sustained, it's excessive, it's intense. It doesn't mean something, but it stays with you as what something was about, what was memorable. I remember seeing the first film I saw when I came to London in 1969 was, I'd heard of Alain Resnais last year at Marienbad, and I wanted to see it. It was coupled with Le Jetée. I remember sitting transfixed by Le Jetée because it was just still images. And I couldn't retain it. I couldn't retain what it was about. As I was reading subtitles, I wasn't up to speed with it. But I kept going on about this film for years afterwards. No one had seen this film because it was controlled by the other cinema. It's very expensive to hire, so people didn't show it. It became a cult film when it was available on video. It became an art school film. And everyone talked about it. But for something like 20 years, it was a kind of very obscure reference to some preoccupation with time and memory. But then it became a cult film. So it's strange how these films have histories. They're not immediate. They don't deliver immediately, or they become different over a period of time. I suspect Tarkovsky will become different over a period of time. There'll have to be another Tarkovsky. We've not seen the last of Tarkovsky. I was thinking, looking at those stills of the Godard history of cinema, that those are some of the most significant images of the late 20th century, just as still images. Something rather wonderful about these montages of cinema and often references to painting. There's a Botticelli image in one of them. So just traces and fragments and very peculiar, almost inefficient. TV gets rid of those moments, edits them out, makes it smooth, makes it efficient, makes it appeal to something which is mediocre.
The TV is a more commercial practice, isn't it? I mean, I never watch TV these days, so I don't even really know what I'm talking about. I haven't watched TV for a long time. Watch Netflix sometimes.
Watch Newsnight to get irritated. Yeah, I like the way they've got practice now of saying, could you tell us if our taxes are going to rise or not? We know that taxes are going to rise now. Will you say it for us? And they refuse to say it. And I love that perversity. I watch it perversely. I think, how can they resist saying what's so blatantly obviously true? How can they all resist that kind of special breed of human beings who can't say what's blatantly obvious? They sustained a lie perversely out of any condition. They'll go to their death and not say taxes are going to rise. Torture me now. I won't tell you that taxes are going to rise. I'll resist any version of the truth.
Yeah.
Well,
I was laughing because it's so true.
It's true. It's true.
can I slightly change the subject and just ask, do you know we were talking about the exhibition that the group was organizing, and so what I was wondering is there was a form sent around which I had trouble making work for me, and I didn't put my name in because I couldn't, and then there was a discussion about what we should actually put in. Has that progressed at all? Because I don't know what to do. I'd like to join the exhibition, but I don't know what to do.
So the exhibition,
Yeah.
It will be based on Jonathan's writing, and these are pretty much what we have now. And I think Lester is still very busy, so maybe next week I'm going to make 3D model of the spaces that we have, so we can have a look of how the space looks like, and.
And how do we enter?
Jojo, you didn't yet create a form, did you? We don't have a form yet to actually do anything, do we?
Lester had created a form, but maybe.
Oh, I didn't see it. I thought he was still creating it. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we will just reorganize it and send it to all again. Because I didn't really no, not yet. So Lester created a form that is just a sheet of paper, but maybe I should talk with him about it before we take any other thing. And what we are now encouraging everyone to do is to read through Jonathan's text, and based on the text, you can fit in any your older work that you feel is very close to the text would be good, or you can do a new thing. We encourage to do that, and
When's the deadline? When's the deadline?
We don't have a deadline now. So, and also for the exhibition, what we are currently facing is we should form a very good proposal so that the Boom Factory will give us the free space. We hope we can form the proposal to a state that can let them make it free for us. And as what I talked with the manager who runs the Boom Factory, she said she wants some topics that is related to the social discourse, so that people can talk about it, and also they are going to take a look if it is suitable for them to put on their social media. So for example, what the current exhibition they have is about soccer, and this soccer is really related to the football. It's really related to the current event. So this exhibition has been put up there for very long. And depends on the content, they are going to give us maybe longer time, or maybe we just have like several dates, or maybe just pop up. But everything is not set. And for this exhibition, what we want is to have good quality of work, and people can think about it and make something new.
What about what's the size of the work? Size of 3D work?
We don't have a limit, so make your own wish, and we are going to be selective. So it's not a guarantee about everyone's work will be put on, but what we can do is to talk about this works that you create, maybe online here, and also there is a part that is like 3D works installations, and a part is works on wall, and a part is performance. So what Jonathan talked with me is to encourage people also to think about performance idea, or maybe to run some interesting workshop that is very special, so that this can be an exhibition, so as an event, or maybe a 3-day.
Suggest a division between, not a division, but a split between the live aspect, a live program.
Yeah, as a live program.
And that the live program could be the Sweetie for the bomb factory. They could feel that that's got a public interface, which is special.
How about talks?
That's what I'm saying. Talks.
Yeah.
And
Talks can be good. And if anyone has like a idea of maybe to be the talk host, we can also talk about it.
Maybe I can think about one.
Yeah, and yeah, you can always talk with me about your idea, and we can form this idea like more specifically.
I think we should try and do something which is not just another turnover, another group exhibition, but something which is related to what we do as an activity. We meet on Mondays, and we
also relate to what the Wild Pillar is doing. I think each of our discussion is very valuable as well.
Jaja, can you, if there is a link, if there is somewhere we're supposed to submit whatever we're submitting, could you
maybe
point
not
me to it? I've never seen anything. I don't know where to post anything.
Maybe not yet submitting, but maybe for now to make some work, or based on.
What I meant was I had some idea of something I wanted that I could use, but I didn't think there was anywhere to put it at the moment. I mean, to send it, sort of. Because last time I spoke to Lester, he said he was going to create a form, but he hadn't done it yet. So that's why I was just waiting for that form. That's all.
There is a form.
Actually, there's a form. But
can you tell me where it is? Can you tell me where it is? That's what I'm asking.
And the thing is, we don't have access to that form. So it was a long time ago. And I did ask Jaja about it. And as Jaja said, she's going to make another one. So I think it's better to wait to Jaja's new form. That will be better.
Let's try and do something next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and also before
trying to involve people directly. I think forms are one thing, but to actually have a discussion about what we think an exhibition should be or what an event should be is quite. I think we need a kind of momentum, which is to do with sharing ideas and.
Yeah, maybe discuss first, or maybe we can also have a section that is read out the writing Jonathan did together, so everyone can have a brainstorming about things that we can do and we can reach. Also, because it's very open-ended and the Boom Factory is almost always there, so we don't we just like want to have some like good thinking before we put anything.
But I think a deadline is really helpful.
Yeah, maybe sorting out a deadline would be very important.
Think of a timeline, because otherwise I get lazy and then you leave it till last minute.
Yeah. Okay.
I think if we really press home the idea of a forum next week,
Yeah,
else on the agenda.
Is there any chance? Is there any chance, or is it convenient for everyone? Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss more detail. You know, I found that probably more efficiency to push things forwards in my experience, if it's convenient for everyone.
Maybe next week.
Yeah, next Friday I think will be fine. Next Friday, or it depends on everyone's schedule, I think.
How do you think, Jonathan?
I'm easy. I'm free generally, except Thursday evening. But
maybe it's better to do it on a Monday, since we all meet on a Monday. If you start introducing new days, there's going to be lots of people who can't come.
Oh yeah, that's right.
If you want everyone to come,
then maybe on the 22nd we can meet in person. But before that, okay. So
where do you mean meet?
Let's have a meeting online next week. So that's on the 15th.
Yeah, online first. So
and then
before next week,
when we're online, we arrange a meeting in person. For those who are really interested, we meet up.
Okay.
And make the first moves, because we can have we can use the text which is written, but also a proposal, a sort of more focused proposal, which is polemical, which is got the speculation of what we want to do and the forms we want to explore. It could be as much about forms which we use as much as individual works. I mean, it could be an interlacing between 2 or 3 projects with this, with 2 or 3 ideas, a live idea, a polemical idea, and a presentational of work idea.
You can meet at my studio if you want.
We'll take that invitation up next. If that's on offer, that's one of the options on the 15th. It's Archway, isn't it?
Yes, Archway, and 1 minute away from Archway Station. It's easy to find it.
Yeah, it's Northern Line, isn't it?
Yeah, Northern Line.
It's about 20 minutes from
Bethnal Green.
From Tottenham Court Road, if we're talking about the centre.
Yeah.
It's easy to find. I didn't get lost.
Is that the bomb factory?
Opposite to the bomb factory.
Opposite.
Yeah.
Why don't we meet at the bomb factory?
Or maybe to my studio. My studio is quite big.
So the venue of a bomb factory is the one at Archway, or is the one at the Covent Garden, or is it Marylebone?
Mine's at the Covent Garden. But for our exhibition place,
I mean our exhibition place, yes.
Yeah, but for our exhibition place, they don't guarantee which we can get.
Okay.
So, but what Jonathan think the most proper one may be the Covent Garden one, because it's not that big and it is just opposite of the station of Covent Garden.
Okay.
It's defined. It's just opposite the tube station.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, the one in Marylebone is very easy to find, but it's
so what I suggest for next week, we can read through the text that Jonathan wrote, and also I'm going to form out the possible timeline with Lester in this week, so I can talk about the timeline that we think about next week online. And next week, you can come to my studio and we can have in-person meeting, which next week, maybe we will have a
22nd.
clearer idea of the works that we want to put.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's resolved. Next week we call a meeting to forward the sort of a hinge, a sort of move from a vague idea to a more concrete idea. And then a meeting together in flesh where we find out what's realistic for us to do and the dates and the different activities.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I feel like I've derailed the conversation.
So sorry for being
Anyway.
very delayed of everything. I have procrastinated.
Should we go back to the reading?
You really spoke a little bit the allegory of being.
Okay.
Just 15 minutes. It's got a good start.
Where is it? Okay.
Oh, and to be honest, so if we so before we put all the proposal to them, I think I'm also going to make 3D models about our possible exhibition on digital form, maybe in the VR headset.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so any form can be possibly, and it might be Boom Factory reject our idea, but we can do something interesting.
I know, but we can use other venues. You can use Safe House. You can use, there's so many other.
Possibly.
Gallery.
Possibly. And yeah, those are things after the proposal, right?
So allegory of being.
Okay.
We'll do it for a quarter of an hour.
Okay.
Sounds good.
To get a start on it. Who'd like to read?
Okay, I'll read. Let me just zoom in a bit, the text. Okay. Allegory of being.
Does everyone
Image.
know what allegory is?
Allegory.
Someone find allegory. So allegory is from allos, other
Story.
a twice told story, which often involves a kind of reversal of public and private. Once a story which is public told in a private, or a private story told in a public form, it's a reversal of public and private. It's often a form of political resistance. Sort of a story about a family in China, which traces the whole history of modern China, but it tells the political story through private means, through just a story about a family. But it's really a critique of Chinese modern history. Film like To Live. Anyway, let's begin. Image.
Can I also understand the allegory also sort of the stratus of the story? I mean, this story of the allegory has something different layers, like the truth, the real one, and the real one and the fiction, like actual and virtual. Is that
It's a fold. It's one of the examples.
the fold? Is that right?
You can't fold of public and private, of hidden and revealed. Anyway, let's continue.
Because obviously the allegory will be generate a new meaning in the different contexts. Okay, sorry. Image. Levinas begins his 1948 essay on art. La reality, et son ombre. Simply enough, as everyone knows, the artist substitutes an image for a concept. Uninterested in the intelligibility of the object, the artist does not maintain a real relationship with the object by knowing it, grasping it, and putting it to work. By the substituting an image for the concept, all real relations with the object are neutralized. Artistic disinterest is just this blindness to concepts. Levinas says the artist's gaze neutralizes the vision and the perception. It is not an act, it is a non-concerning and non-knowing gaze. It does not cross the distance in order to grasp an object, as does the hand that labels or the consciousness that seizes the things in the act of the recognition. The simple and elementary substitution of the image for the concept inverts all the directionality or conscious aiming at. The image that is artist substitutes for the concept is not other object and does not behave like an object. In everyday life, in everyday comments with the things, the seizes the object and tends to disappear into the usefulness, its function, its familiarity. Art arrests this movement of recognition of the industry. In art, that which vanishes into the utility and knowledge reappears outside its usefulness, outside all the real relations, in a space strictly uncrossable, infinitely fragility, only approximately there at all, as if its existence had been paradised, or as if the object led phantom existence parallel to its truth. The image is fundamentally or essentially passive. It eludes all the attempts to seize it because it occupies the empty space. An image, quite simply, is nothing. Our relation with the image marks a hold over us rather than our initiative. Marco impressionance and the Prasto's quinance initiative. The Levinas says the image contrasts with the concepts, or more precisely, it is the very event of contrasting with the concepts, precisely to the extent that I do not act on, know, or think. The thing is the concept. There is an inversion of my everyday relation with the object, and subjectivity is pushed to an extreme pole of the passivity, unable to seize an image, unable to assess an image. I participate its imagery dimension. This passivity can be observed, and Levinas points out in image and dance and magic. To this list, we may add chains, the
Hysterical.
a hysterical possession and hypnotical suggestion. In short, the image inspires, and it is just the image that inspires, not the object it represents. Precisely when there is nothing, that just insofar as there is nothing, the image exercises its impotent power, reason, and the participation.
So that's the main point, which is very close to Blanchot. So what's been said so far? I mean, it's a sort of quite a complete thesis.
The image is not knowledge. The image is not. It's not the concept, but the antithesis of the concept. The image is nothing. I think this comes back to. Actually, let's go back to Heidegger. Nothingness. The image is going from nothingness. Yeah.
Maybe it's the idea.
It's also passive.
Yeah, passive in that sense, because it's I mean, that's the same thing as it's that's related to there's no concept. It's away from the concept. It's kind of static thing, stasis.
It feels like it's the content that makes sense to you, makes the image make sense to you. Or the image would just be nothing.
It's an idea of substituting an image.
I think he mentioned the word. Did he say phantasm or fantastic or something? I mean, this is kind of this is a reference to the idea of. I think that's or Plato's idea of a simulacrum. In other words, it's not an image of something. It's there's no model here, nothing to copy. It's kind of unstable in that sense. It disrupts the idea. It unhinges the idea. You can't put your hand on it. That's why it's nothing in that sense.
So it's an idea of the substitute, like image can replace the concept to understanding the reality and art.
Well, I mean, I think underlying here, there's this reference to this. Why do we talk about concept? I think we're talking about underlying here. There's some relationship between object and subject, and he's trying to say that isn't what's going on here. Right? I mean, if this were object subject, we'd have the concept in a Kantian sense, right? We're not, but we're going down a different path here because we're talking about the image and we're talking about the aesthetic of image, and not this idea of this object subject in that sense.
Therefore, not a representation.
Absolutely. So it's not the Kantian representation, which would be this object subject relationship, which is built around the concept, right? Because we look at something and we make it. We take the, according to Kant, we take the object, the sensations we see, and the imagination translates them into relates them to some concept, and that's not what's going on here. Right?
And it follows that then there's a naming.
Do you think it relates to the free will?
Well, I think if you bring in the free will, then it does relate. I mean, this is relate. That would be kind of. I think it depends who you ask, right? I think Levinas would think the free will is kind of relates to the morality of the image, or some the ethics of the image, not morality. There's a kind of ethics underlying. But if you were to ask Heidegger, he'd disagree entirely with that. But I'm not sure we can really. Maybe for Levinas it does.
By the way, Levinas was responsible for bringing Heidegger's being in time into consciousness of Paris in pre-war years.
The next essay, if you read it in this book, is about Levinas's ethics. And his ethics are highly related to the ethics of Heidegger. And Heidegger absolutely never wrote anything about ethics. And so it's a strange ethics that we're talking about here. And it's based around free will, I think, which somehow relates to the work of art.
We've got 10 minutes. Let's read for another 5 minutes, and then who's going to read? One more reader. Would like to read?
Me?
Go on, you read.
From where?
Rhythm and participation.
The reason and the participation. 倒数第8行。
Rhythm and participation are the exceptional structure of aesthetic existence. Last tractus rationnel de. Okay, and are also the way the poetic order affects us. This involvement, importantly, is not beyond representation. It is, to the contrary, the profound involvement of the subject in its own representations. Profound because their entry into us is one with our entry into them. And therefore, in this rhythm, there is no longer a oneself, but a sort of passage from oneself to anonymity. The participation itself is an unrepresentable movement. In aesthetic existence, there is an indistinction between who is possessed or affected and that which possesses or affects. Levinas notes in passing that this simultaneity of possession and dispossession has a role in ecstatic right. Aesthetic existence involves us in an indistinction of same and other. It is thus a truly unrepresentable moment, but not a beyond, wherein the density of being in its here is invaded by an nowhere, a nothing. Rhythm cannot be objectified. It can only be dramatized, enacted, suffered. It is experienced as indistinction, as by self as other, unable to hang on to its freedom. The subject experiences an exteriority in which it cannot but mistake itself for another. That is, the subject ceases to experience itself as itself. Totally absorbed in the seeing consciousness, having nothing to aim at, becomes supererogatory, as does the body. For that one's actor and spectator, the body is transformed into sensations belonging to no one, or belonging to an anonymous someone whose organs of perception have defected. Hence, the fear of the aesthetic milieu that is attested to in the nerve anxiety so many people feel in the crowded concert hall or the August Museum. An image, Levinas says, is essentially musical insofar as it detaches itself from the object as the sound from which makes the sound. In the aesthetic experience, this detachment is an essential atmosphere. In fact, however, this atmosphere is everywhere because images are everywhere. Indeed, the whole world wears on its face its own image, and we are thus permitted to think a dimension of aesthetic participation that is general and not restricted to the movie theater or concert hall. This general dimension of profound participation would then subtend consciousness and industry at every moment. Industrial language necessarily fails to tell of this involvement, for this profound participation defects from every moment of subjectivity. For example, of initiative and power. The deconceptualization of reality that art realizes restrictedly is, in fact, a generalized impersonality that lies below all knowing. If you like, an ecstatic right shadows all recognition, all cognition, where being in the world involves existence in concepts and truths. Ecstatic sensations depart from each moment of being in the world and involve us in a discarnation of the real simply because of the image, the non-object or the music that is on the face of all that is in the world. Beneath or beside one's conceptual commerce with the world, there remains a rhythmic participation whose immediacy drives out all thought. Aesthetic existence, in short, is perpetually suggestive, affirmative, influential, impersonal, and immemorial. It is as if in the real itself a band of sirens had always called to us, as in Blanchot's retelling of the fabulous episode from Homer. Art realizes the paradox of immediacy, the paradox of immediacy that drives out all mediation and essentially empty, drives out itself and is thus outside memory. Disincarnate and impersonal aesthetic existence cannot enter into any present, or it dies when forced to, as to the sirens in Blanchot's essay. It is thus intolerable to thought, not the minutest silver of reflection or temporal lag makes room for subjective initiative or action. The music lover no doubt feels great passion as she listens to a beloved piece, but it is not certain that she feels herself in the passion. Paradoxically, immediacy unhinges me from myself. The proximity of art to magic and trance indicates a trajectory wherein the subject experiences a fainting away of self altogether and an exposure to exteriority. The body has a membrane, a skin, but the self does not. The magic conversion of the object into an image, a non-object, a nothing, triggers the immediacy of passionate involvement. While retaining the form, colors, sound, and other qualities of the object, the image, in effect, drives the object out of the world, chaserless, and thus breaks up representation. Because the image subtracts the object to be represented from the representation, the image discarnates the real, but this is only because the real is always already approached by its image. The whole of our world, with its elementary and intellectual elaborated givens can touch us musically and can become an image. Art in general realizes this latency and perpetually effaces the difference between the real and the imaginary, nature and mimesis. La réalité et son ombre is thus an introduction to the important recent work done by Philippe Lacoue-Labatte on radical or non-Platonic mimesis.
Good. Also, what comments? You got 5 minutes. Summarize. It's very clearly written, isn't it?
No.
I like this type of writing where you repeat yourself 50,000 times, and every time add a small amount more, just repeat. And he does that over and over again. There are other writers who do the same. It's a very nice way to write, and for the reader. He has this style where he just repeats himself effectively from many different angles, adding each time more detail.
Another nuance. Indeed, it's rhythmical. Follow the theme of what he's talking about. Physical.
Yeah.
Something which can be avoided in writing is musicality and rhythmicality in thesis writing, but when it works, it's really compelling.
Yeah, I mean, the text almost shouts out at you. It's kind of difficult to read it in a quiet way.
Any points, any ideas? We can recall also the PowerPoint.
I like this part where he says on page 16, aesthetic existence, in short, is perpetually suggestive, affirmative, influential, impersonal, and immoral. And that link to Blanchot's retelling of the fabulous Homer. So I think that's really important, I think. It's got lots of things that it does.
I was interested.
Go on.
Sorry, no, I you go, Jonathan.
Oh, no, you go.
Well, I suppose I was just going to say something in a slightly differently, which was a different point, which was that I thought it was interesting reading this text with the text we read a few weeks ago about Deleuze's understanding of concepts. And I appreciate it seems that they're using concepts and the word concept in a very different way, but it seemed that Deleuze sort of, who I presume was writing sort of 10, 15 years after this was written, was sort of maybe responding in a way, sort of thinking that the concept itself, from what I remember of that text we read previously, Deleuze was sort of saying that he was putting a lot of different categories of creative practice together, philosophy, art, even science and mathematics. And my sort of memory of that text was that Deleuze felt that the purpose of a philosopher was to construct these kind of creative concepts. And so I was sort of thinking about this text within the sort of frame of thinking that, maybe that idea that the image is an inversion, or is kind of unlinked to the concept. So Deleuze kind of even sort of erodes the concept, so it almost turns the concept into that work of art, which is at the sort of, the edge of becoming, or kind of unknowing. Whereas it seems that in this article, the concept is kind of more anchored.
I mean, it'd be a general skepticism about phenomenology within Deleuze. This is part of a phenomenological direction. Definitely draws from Heidegger and to some extent Merleau-Ponty.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see this in relation to Deleuze. It's not like miles away, but there is a difference. And this concept that Deleuze is referring to, that when he writes that, he's writing. That was like his last book, right, about what is philosophy. I think Heidegger wrote a similar thesis, and this, what do philosophers do? And I'm not so sure that Levinas would disagree with that. And I'm not so sure that Deleuze would disagree that, because there's this reference to Kant's idea of the concept, the image, and the subject, which I think Deleuze would also, he's also prodding against, and maybe he's taking it a step further, and he's responding to this type of text. But maybe Levinas is not so post-Kantian Deleuze. And maybe Deleuze is following more Heidegger, I guess. But I don't see them as fundamentally different. And I don't think they would both agree that what philosophers do is create concepts. And now what we're talking here is about what is aesthetics almost, as opposed to what is philosophy, as to what is the concept. What is a concept?
I think you've had the last word. Any last point?
Image is aesthetic.
I wondered something, but it might be too long to talk about. I just wondered how ethics, how his in this, what his concept of what is ethics in this for this philosopher, and compared to what Nancy thinks ethics is, or how Nancy.
Levinas stated that ethics is the first philosophy, comes before everything.
And it's basically this relationship to the other. In other words, it's a nothingness, actually. It's the fact that you are confronted with the other. You're forced with no actual choice, because you're effectively, you are born of the other. I don't mean born in the born sense, but I mean you don't exist without the other. So you're thrust into ethics. It's kind of an ethics of almost nothingness.
You could say with Levinas that it's all centered on the face-to-face encounter.
Which is quite similar to Heidegger. I think somehow there's a connection to Heidegger, I felt. It's almost not an ethics, almost nothing.
Okay, so we meet next week. We'll if we've got time, we'll finish this text off. Thanks for those who've read today. It's sort of let's do what we can to. be too much to read. But, I mean, it's partly an introduction to the text. You've got to wrestle with it yourself as well.
Vertical specificity.
We did a lot today. Really a lot. Anyway, see you next week if I don't see you before.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.